welcome everyone. I'm glad you came out on a very Monday evening. This is the regular ANC meeting every second and fourth Mondays of the month. We will not be meeting, however, on the second Monday in October. That's a holiday and the community center will be closed, so we will not be meeting that day. Our next meeting after this is October 22nd. The first thing we'll do is introduce the commissioners. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Randy Speck. I represent ANC 34G03. That's the area basically between Nevada and Nebraska and Broad Branch. And Abe, you want to begin?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman, and I represent ANC 34G01, which is Hawthorne and part of Barnaby Woods.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Shanda of Garfield, and I represent ANC 34G02, which is on the western side of the district, closest to Rock Creek Park. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, I'm Chris Romboludi, 3G07. My district is what's known as Chevy Chase Heights, which is bounded by military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada.
Hello, I'm Jerry Mallett. I represent 3G05. I represent the district from Chevy Chase Circle down to Mount Jocelyn and across to Broad Branch.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Dan Bradfield. I represent 3G06, which is Chevy Chase down the Connecticut corridor, military over to Chevy Chase Parkway.
Okay, we have a quorum. Becky Madek is not here, but I understand she's on her way and will join us shortly, hopefully. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda for the evening. It was published on the Chevy Chase Community Listserv, on the Northwest Current, on neighborhood, on Nextdoor. Our website, however, has been down this week, so we haven't been able to get it up on our website. But any modifications or changes we want to make to the agenda?
You want to read the agenda, just so that we know?
There's a copy of the agenda. It should be on the back table. Is that correct?
Actually, I think I need to make some copies.
Sorry. Well, I can briefly, it'll be easier just for me to describe the agenda then. Usually we have copies on the back table. The first substantive, we have commissioner announcements and community announcements, as we always do. And then a presentation by the Department of Transportation. Derek Voight is here tonight to talk about their findings and recommendations for safety improvements at the intersection of Military Road and Chevy Chase Parkway. At about 7:45, there will be a discussion and possible vote on the application for a special exception to a rear yard setback at 3400 McKinley Street. At about 7:55, we'll have a discussion and possible vote on the liquor license application for the new restaurant that's going to be at the old site of the American City Diner. At 8:15 is a presentation by Cecilia Lane, who is a DOEE Environmental Protection Specialist, about the planned work on culvert repairs under Broad Branch Road. And at 8:30 is discussion and possible vote on potential comments on draft small cell design guidelines. And then we'll have commission business after that.
Randy,
Yes, sir.
Should I, at this point, make a modification to the agenda and talk about traffic on Western and Hawthorne? Or is that something you do?
Why don't you bring it up in commissioner announcements and then we'll deal with it at that time.
Great.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda? 6-0, okay. I have a few announcements first. Some of these I've made at previous meetings, but I want to reiterate them. First, there will be a candidates forum sponsored by the ANC and the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. This will be for candidates for the at-large council race. And the forum is going to be here at the Community Center on October 16th between 7 and 9. And All of the candidates have indicated that they will be here for that, so we hope to have a big crowd to see what is shaping up as probably one of the only real contested races. Also from 6:30 to 7, there will be a meet and greet for ANC candidates for ANC 34G. So all of the candidates for our ANC will be there as well, that you can talk to them before the forum. Second announcement is with regard to the Chevy Chase Community Center modernization. We held the first of what will be undoubtedly many meetings to start finalizing the work on the design and the transition spaces for the community center. We held that meeting on September 17th. We had representatives from the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Department of General Services, and the library who were here for that meeting. We created a working group. There were two major issues we were focusing on. One was the design process going forward, and we had got a lot of information from DPR about that. And the other issue is what happens to the programs, the existing programs here, to get them a place where they can function during the construction, which probably is not going to be until about 2020. With regard to the issue about the transition, Commissioners Clayman and Mallett are going to be heading a working group to look at that issue, to find alternative spaces, to first of all determine what needs to be moved, and then find alternative spaces for those programs. And they're going to come back and give us some recommendations. We're thinking that this has a fairly short time frame because if there are costs that are going to be involved, we want to be able to go to the mayor and then to the council and make sure that that money would be included in the budget for FY 2020. Secondly, Commissioner Fromboludi is going to be working with DPR, hopefully closely. We're going to find out how closely during the selection process for a designer for the building. And that process is probably going to culminate with a selection of a contractor, a design contractor, right after the first of the year. And so we're hoping to be particularly involved in that design process after that point, once a contractor is on board. We're going to have a number of other meetings. The first of these is going to be on October the 15th. This one is going to focus almost entirely on finding accommodations for the existing programs at the community center during construction. Everyone's invited to attend these meetings, as all of our meetings are open to everyone. We hope you'll come and participate in this process. The next announcement is with regard to the DC Water Stakeholder Alliance. And I was asked by Councilmember Todd to be the Ward 4 representative on DC Water's newly formed Stakeholder Alliance. And this is basically a brainchild of the new CEO and General Manager at DC Water, who wanted to get more input from the community on issues like the rate structure, about the safety provisions at DC Water, about infrastructure improvements. And so this is about 20 people from all over the city who are participating in this process. And it's intended to provide a forum for customers, as representatives of customers, to raise issues that might arise with regard to DC Water's management. And so if there are any of those kinds of issues, please let me know. The next one I will leave because I'm sure that Jackson is going to talk about it shortly. So I'll just leave that one. The final announcement I have is with regard to grants, the grant program. At our July 23rd meeting, we adopted a schedule for giving grants for the fall. We have money in our budget for grants to nonprofits for community-based work. The grant application and the criteria for giving grants are on our website. Our website's not up right now. But the submission of applications has to be by October 9th. And then presentation by the applicants at our October 22nd meeting, and then the commission will vote on the applications at its November 26th meeting. So if you know anyone who is interested in making an application for a grant, please let us know. We'll be able to get to them a paper copy of an application if it's not available online. Okay, that's all I have. Abe, you have an issue that you would like to address and may require some commission action.
Thank you. I did want to address the increased traffic in Hawthorne and Barnaby Woods as a result of closures on Beach Drive and Oregon Avenue. Because of the water project on Oregon Avenue and significant closures on Beach Drive, Wise Road and Chestnut Street have become the primary east-west detour north of Military Road. And so there's a significant amount of traffic on that street and a significant amount of traffic coming down Western, particularly in the morning. And it leads to a pretty significant backup, a pretty high volume of cars for a purely residential area, and just fundamentally a mess. And one potential solution that I propose the commission support is to request that the Department of Transportation place a traffic control officer at Pinehurst Circle so that the traffic is able to flow smoothly. That seems to be the main place where the backup is, because there's a stop sign there, and then after that, there's not a stop sign for at least a little bit. So if traffic was able to flow smoothly on Western after Pinehurst Circle, there would be presumably less traffic, a little bit safer, and a little bit easier of a morning commute for lots of people in the area. So I'd like to make a resolution that requesting that the Department of Transportation place a traffic control officer at Pinehurst Circle, and that's what we should do.
Okay, and Abe raised this, I know we talked this afternoon, or emailed this afternoon, that we really can't wait until the October 22nd meeting to do this, that it's a fairly acute problem now. And I have been trying to get DDOT to respond to this increasing problem that's caused by the combination of Beach Drive's closure and the closure of Oregon Avenue. And we really need to get some relief on this, and we've got DDOT here tonight, so hopefully what we're going to do, I suggest that we write a letter to DDOT Director Marushian and indicate that the Commission has adopted this unanimously, and that we are anxious for them to do something promptly to alleviate this problem, and suggest a traffic control officer is the best answer short term.
I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have comments or suggestions on that? Okay. All those in favor of sending the letter? 6-0. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Any other announcements, Abe? Shannon?
I just wanted to briefly mention during my update.
I'm sorry, could everybody speak up just a little bit? The acoustics in here are bad.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to briefly mention that last week, Commissioners Beck-Clayman and I attended a meeting at Lafayette Elementary School regarding the DDOT proposed plan for the Oregon Avenue Watershed Green Street project, and a number of residents attended that event and update. And since that time, I just wanted to apprise everyone that I've gotten emails and calls from residents regarding the timing of the process and the lack of notice regarding some issues. And I wanted to let everyone know that we as a commissioners representing those areas plan to continue to work with residents regarding this issue. A number of residents since that time have written detailed emails about placement in terms of the bioretention cells as well as parking. And so they are going to be attending our October 22nd meeting, they as in DDOT. And so this is an ongoing issue, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention and to let all residents who are being affected by those bioretention cells know that they can email us or call us regarding any issues that they have identified with their particular areas. Thank you.
All right. Community announcements. As we usually do, is there a representative from the mayor's office? I'm sorry, I've got to get really close now. Is there a representative from the mayor's office here? Oh, yes. I don't recognize all of our new mopers.
Hello everyone, I'm Rich Harrington. I'm one of the Ward 4 mopers, the Mayor's Office of Community Related Services. You might see Jess here all the time, but I'm here for this evening. And while I don't have any mayoral updates today, I just want to let you know that I will be here afterwards. So if you have anything that you need to talk about or bring to my attention, please come back in. Great, thank you.
Anthony.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Anthony from Councilmember Chase's office.
It's on.
Good evening. I'm Anthony from Councilmember Chase's office. I have 3 quick announcements. One is that this Thursday, from beginning at 1:30, there is the Vision Zero Roundtable. The Councilmember Che, Chair of Transportation and Environment Committee, is co-chairing a roundtable with Councilmember Allen, the Chair of the Judiciary Committee, to talk to at least DDOT, but possibly other agencies show up about the progress towards Vision Zero. Vision Zero began and was kicked off in 2015, and so we're about 3 years into it, and the numbers are not that great. So the Councilmember Che and Councilmember Allen are hosting this roundtable to talk with primarily the Department of Transportation about what they're doing to move us towards the goal of Vision Zero, and regretfully why the numbers are what they are.
When is that again?
Oh, sorry. Vision Zero is a goal that by, I believe, 2023, the goal of zero pedestrian and cyclist and driver fatalities, zero roadway fatalities. Like I said before, the numbers have not been going down, so we are having this roundtable to try to get to the bottom of why and what we can do moving forward to make sure that every user of the road is safe, no matter what form of transportation he or she chooses.
When and where?
It is this Thursday at 1:30 at the Council Building, John A. Wilson Building, 1350 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is room 500, the main council chamber. On a more positive note, and a little bit further in on the calendar, the Merch Fall Festival is October 13th from 12 to 4. The Councilmember Che will be there. For those who don't know where Merch is, it's at 4810 36th Street Northwest. And then the following week, on October 21st, is the Key Harvest Festival at Key Elementary School at 5001 Dana Place, also from 12 to 4. Councilmember Che will be there. She, every year, is the judge of the pumpkin carving contest. I assume that will be the same this year. Other than that, no more announcements.
Thank you, Anthony. Jackson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackson Carnes. I'm with Councilmember Brandon Todd's office. A few updates from our office. As you know, the new legislative season has begun. Councilmember Todd's going to be focused on getting the Office of Nightlife formed. So that's going to work on strengthening the relationship between establishments and, commercial and residential communities. Additionally, a couple of community events coming up. This Wednesday, September 26th at 11 a.m. It's going to be the ribbon cutting for the new transitional housing in Ward 4. So it's going to be right at the corner of Pitt and McKinley Street Northwest. Additionally, October 25th at 10 a.m. is the 4th annual State of the Ward 4 Senior Address. And that's going to be at Riggs LaSalle Recreation Center. So it's 501 Riggs Road Northeast. Additionally, this is still in the planning process, so but you can go ahead and save the date for it. Councilmember Todd's going to be hosting a meeting about Oregon Avenue on October 24th. So more than likely it's going to be here or at Lafayette, and we'll be sure to flyer the neighborhoods and put it out on the listserv so people know about it.
This is about the reconstruction of Oregon Avenue?
Correct. As we finish up with the Easy Water project and as we begin with the reconstruction.
It's also going to be on our October 22nd agenda.
Okay.
DDOT is going to be here for that as well.
Great. Very good. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Dora, you have an announcement to make, I think?
Hello, my name is Dora Correa, Dora, and I'm running for Ward 3, State Board of Education. I have some flyers. I'd like to encourage you to please take a look at my platform, and I welcome you to a candidates forum that will be held on October 15th at the Tinley Town Library. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Any other community announcements? Okay, we'll begin with the first item that's on our substantive agenda, and that's the presentation by DDOT. Jerry, you want to introduce that?
Earlier this calendar year, several neighbors that live near the Chevy Chase Parkway Military Road intersection, myself and Commissioner Speck met with representatives from DDOT over concerns for safety issues that have been plaguing us on at that intersection for some time. So they're here to talk about the safety study that they did, and I know a lot of neighbors are here from that area, so I'm sure we'll have a lot of comments once it's finished. So,
thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everybody. My name is Derek Voight. I'm with the District Department of Transportation. I'm in our Transportation Operations and Safety Division. I hope that everybody's had a chance to grab a copy of the study findings, well, the general study and our findings, which is on that table. If not, we can get you a copy. And what my goal for this evening is I have 25 minutes on the agenda, so I'm going to try to move very quickly through generally what you can find in this study so that we get to actually discussing what the recommendations are for treatments out of the intersection. All right, so starting on page 2 here, basically we've laid out the background here of the intersection. So for those who are not familiar, Military Road is a principal arterial. Chevy Chase Parkway is a local roadway. Chevy Chase Parkway is stop control on its approaches, meaning that traffic on the side streets has to stop prior to entering the intersection. Traffic on Military Road does not stop. We did perform a series of data collection out at the intersection. One, in the beginning of our study, to understand what the operations were at the intersection. That included a turning movement count, which basically looks at how vehicles move at the intersection, who's going left, right, through, etc. That diagram is on page 3. That information was used to inform our analysis later on, and we'll kind of be alluding back to the information to that count data and how we used it. Overall, it will come as no surprise to those that are familiar with the intersection that Military Road handles the majority of the traffic at that intersection. It's about a 10-to-1, 11-to-1 split. We have about 11,000 vehicles a day that are using Military Road versus about 1,000 that are combined on the Chevy Chase Parkway approaches. We, in addition, collected speed data out there. It's not incredibly significant to the study, but while we were collecting data out there, it's one of the metrics that's captured automatically by our devices. So we're certainly pleased to report that the 85th percentile speeds on this section of Chevy Chase Parkway to the north of Military Road are kind of within bounds, slightly below 25 miles an hour. Not incredibly germane to the study. However, flipping over to page 5, is kind of where we get into the substance of the study. So we took a look at crash data at the intersection, which was, again, the reason that we were out there, concerned over safety at the intersection. And we took a look going back to 2015, and that our crash data diagram that you see here, I'll explain it in just a moment. But effectively, we had 15 crashes. These are police-reported crashes. So typically that means that either somebody was injured, unfortunately, or vehicles were undrivable, or it was a major enough collision where folks involved MPD. We certainly know that there are crashes that are going on at intersections throughout the district that are not being reported. So please bear in mind that these crash numbers are the count of folks that have had MPD come and write a report at the scene. Now, the crash diagram, which is in the lower portion of the page, basically shows you what types of collisions are occurring at the intersection. So just so that we don't confuse the numbers that you're looking at here, the actual numbers that you see in color and in circles are the crash number in terms of how we're correlating this diagram to our internal study. That's not a count of how many crashes there actually were with that sort of configuration. All right, so we have 15 total crashes, only 14 of those had enough information to allow us to plot it. The missing one crash we know was an angle collision. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a moment, but it's not coded on the diagram, but it is counted in our results. Overall, what we found in terms of crashes and what crashes are of most concern to us at the Department of Transportation are the angle collisions. So what that means is effectively where you have a side street entering and you have a main line and those vehicles meet at nearly a right angle. Those tend to be very high severity collisions, and that's what we want to look to address basically at all costs. So again, of the 15 crashes at this intersection, 13 of those were angle crashes. Right, so the ones where folks are meeting at nearly a right angle. 11 of those crashes were on the southbound approach of Chevy Chase Parkway, and one of them was on the northbound approach. So keep in mind that missing one is the one that we can't figure out exactly which direction it was heading from. But obviously that kind of leads us to believe that our concern is really the southbound approach. While we know that the sight distance is limited on all of the approaches, we'll get into that in just a moment. You can see a clear pattern in the crash data that involves vehicles that are traveling southbound on Chevy Chase Parkway, and typically westbound vehicles on Military Road, but in 3 cases they were eastbound vehicles. So moving on to page 6, we talk a little bit about some of the site constraints that are present out there. So this is the geometric design section. We have a lot of sight distance obstructions out there that are either a function of the roadway, either through grade, there are utility poles, street trees, landscaping in some cases. So we have a lot of constraints that we don't have a lot of easy ability to move them out of the way so that we can gain a better view. Now, on the northbound approach, so on the south curve where we have the parking, we know that parked vehicles contribute to the sight deficiency out there, and we'll talk about how we're going to address that a little bit further on. But unfortunately, on the southbound approach, so on the north curve of Military Road, we don't have parking, so truly our constraints are a function of kind of the topography and the site itself. We know that out there, I should say that engineering guidance basically tells us that for a vehicle that's traveling 30 miles an hour, we need about 200 feet of stopping sight distance. The good news is that we don't have any horizontal obstructions in terms of vehicles that are traveling on Military Roadway. However, we also know that due to the significant queuing that occurs along westbound Military Road for the signal at Connecticut Avenue, that can back up to Chevy Chase Parkway, at which point in time If I'm a motorist on westbound Chevy Chase Parkway, I don't really have an opportunity to have that 200 feet of reaction time to vehicles that are entering from the side street because that queue is blocking the view. So the good news is that it's kind of the roadway itself doesn't have the site constraint, but the bad side of that is that we have an operational constraint as a result of the signal. So we put together a couple of recommendations that are here in this report, and we've also considered a couple of items that are not listed because they're simply not feasible either through our analysis or just based on the site constraints. So when we first met out on the scene, there was some questions about what we can do to improve signing in the intersection. So our first recommendation, which is titled Signing Improvements Out There, speaks to some of those concerns that we heard when we were in the field, both from residents and from the commissioner. There was a concern that folks on the Chevy Chase Parkway approaches either didn't see the stop sign, didn't know that they were approaching an intersection. Although that doesn't bear out in the crash data, we clearly see in the crash data that a lot of it has to do with the operational queuing on the west leg. So again, that's the queue along Military Road. We certainly wouldn't discount the fact that folks may miss the stop sign. So we do have a signing scheme here to add some additional signings, some stop ahead warning signs to hope to kind of call attention to the intersection for folks that are on the Chevy Chase Parkway approaches. In addition to that, in our signing changes, we're removing one parking space from the west leg of the intersection on the south curb. That's to help to open up the visibility for motorists that are on the south approach of the northbound motorists on Chevy Chase Parkway. In addition to the southeast corner, we have some signs that we'd like to separate. There's a speed limit sign, as well as a pedestrian warning sign that are on the same post that are also creating a little bit of a sight distance, or rather a sight constraint as you're looking to your right on the northbound approach. The more drastic treatment is on the following page, so I'm on page 9, and this is a one-way northbound conversion of the north leg of the roadway. And this would impact the entirety of the block between Military and Legation. And I'll get into a little bit more about the impacts in a moment because I know that's what everybody wants to hear. But effectively what this would do is this would remove the southbound approach, so it would remove the ability for those collisions to occur, which are currently occurring on the southbound approach. We would achieve this through signing pavement markings as well as flexible delineator posts to narrow the approach so that it wasn't just a wide approach that invited fast turns. We would narrow the approach. You can see a scheme of this in figure 11 of how the approaches would be narrowed, lined with flex posts, and what some of the signing would look like associated with that conversion. In addition to that, we would need to change the signing at the intersection of Legation and Chevy Chase Parkway to support that conversion. So you can see on figure 12, the same. It's just a signing scheme for what the changes would look like if we proceeded with the one-way conversion. Okay, so on page 11, we have a breakdown of what will happen from a traffic impact standpoint if we convert that north leg to one-way northbound. So in addition to the data collection that we did at the front end of the project, which was back in April of this year, we recently did some data collection following Labor Day surrounding the intersection, well, rather on both the east and the west legs of Legation and the north leg of Chevy Chase Parkway at Legation. So all of that combines with the data that we had in the at the beginning of the study, and we're able to basically show you how the intersection is being used currently in figure 13. So all of the numbers and the arrows that you see associated there are how the roadways are being used, so what the baseline traffic is out there. And that will help us, or that allowed us to develop what the diversion would look like if we were to close the southbound, or rather, if we were to convert it to one-way northbound between Legation and Military Road. Now, one thing to keep in mind, so on figure 14, you can see we've split the trips, and the way that we did this was we were basically saying if you're heading south on Legation, 511 of those trips would make a left to head out to Nevada, and 90 would make a right to head out to Connecticut. Now, those directional splits are based on what the behavior that we see occurring at the intersection of Chevy Chase and Military. So we looked at how folks are turning left and right and going through, and then we applied that same metric to legation, since we presumed that those trips that were previously through trips to military will behave the same way at legation as they previously did at military. Now, one thing to keep in mind about these numbers is this is if we assign all of the trips and if they remain. Right? So it's likely that over time, as folks realize that either folks that are from within a couple of blocks in the neighborhood, once they realize that they can't make the connection there, they'll likely divert elsewhere to either Nevada or Connecticut and not come all the way down to legation to make that left. But in the near term, we certainly can expect, as people are learning it, that we would expect that those trips would continue to head down Chevy Chase Parkway and then be forced to either go left or right. Now, I appreciate that 500 additional vehicles on legation sounds like a very large number when you consider that the background traffic out there is about 260 currently, and so these are eastbound trips down legation heading towards Nevada. In figures 15 and 16, you can see what a typical AM and PM peak looks like. So this is a standard industry practice where we look at just the AM and the PM peak hours. So these are the worst case scenarios out of the AM hours. We typically consider 7 to 10 AM and then select the worst of that. And then again, the same approach for the PM. So typically so to use legation eastbound as an example, you can see there are typically 28 trips in the morning. Under the diversion, that would look like an additional 60 trips on that road. So we're talking about effectively a car a minute in addition to what is there. So while the 500 number looks very large over the day, when you consider it on an hour by hour and even the peak hour basis, it's somewhat of a more, I think, manageable number. And so that is effectively a summary of what you have here. And I'd certainly be interested to answer any questions and take any feedback that you might have.
So obviously a lot of neighbors are going to have some comments, but a few things that I'd like to contribute before that happens. So I've done some of my own inspections and measurements out there as well. And there are a few things that I wanted to bring up, whether you at least considered them or would consider them instead of, at least this is my opinion, instead of the one-way. Okay. And some of those include, first off, the parking on military. The parked cars are they start 15 feet from the pedestrian walkway. So that's even shorter than it's supposed to be in DC.
25, correct.
Right, and so I measured it out, and I thought that by taking a full space away, you would get closer to 30 feet on both sides. That would be on both sides of military as you're going north on either, if you made in either direction, the westbound traffic on military on both sides of Chevy Chase Parkway, both sides need to be opened up because somebody that's coming on Chevy Chase Parkway going north can't see cars coming from the right and they can't see cars coming from the left. And that's a function, I think, of, so for instance, today there was a truck parked in one of those spots and you would have had to get rid of 50 feet in order to see. So there's a lot more to be gained, I think, by taking away more feet, and it would only be, I think, one parking spot, maybe 1.5. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that would open it up a lot. The signage, I agree with a lot of your recommendations there. The existing signs don't work well, and there's a lot of ways that we could improve the signage, and I know that I've heard some others from neighbors that I'm sure you'll hear from. There have been in the past safety mirrors on that block, and some people like those safety mirrors a lot. I know I use them. They haven't been around in a while, and I think you should reconsider looking into the safety mirrors. Right now, military backs up and the intersection is blocked completely a lot during the day. And it doesn't have to be during rush hour, it could be any time of the day. So whether any of the signage was not to block the box or lines about blocking the box, I think that needs to be considered. And one other thing that I want to, two other things, excuse me, that I want to mention. A lot of problems that we have they're exacerbated by the fact that we don't have sidewalks. So between Legation and Military on the east side, there are no sidewalks. On the west side, half the block has sidewalks. From Military to Kanawha, there's no sidewalks at all on either side of the street. On Military, between Kanawha and Jocelyn, there's no sidewalk at all on the east side and only half a block sidewalk on the west side. And some of that contributes to some of the issues that we have. And finally, I noticed that often we have EMS or fire trucks or police vehicles that use Chevy Chase Parkway. So I spoke with Chief Graham of DC Fire today, and I asked him what impact any of these road changes would have on him. And he said it would definitely impact response times for fire, EMS, and police. It would require retraining and can impact when people arrive at the scene of when they're supposed to arrive at. So he thought that needed to be something that's taken into consideration as well. So those are some thoughts I had, and I know Commissioner Bradfield we share that intersection. So, okay, so you could deal with it.
If I can just respond, can I just respond to just a couple points on there? So we'll certainly take a look at the parking on the east and west of the intersection for the northbound approach. Bear in mind that the majority of the crashes are on the southbound approach. So given the unpopularity of taking the parking, but with your support, we'll be happy to remove the additional spaces. It will absolutely help to open up the site distance. Concerning mirrors, DDOT does not support or install safety mirrors, basically because of the maintenance issues that result from them not being kept up, etc. Mirrors would not be something that would help, or rather would not be a treatment that DDOT would employ out there. The do not block intersection signing, of course, and sidewalks are something that I can pass along to our colleagues that handle sidewalks. And then, of course, we're always concerned about the emergency response community and their response time, so I'd be interested in either coordinating further with them. Should we pursue one-way conversion, or should we think we're heading that direction to make sure that we can resolve any concerns that the fire has?
Yeah, I want to make a comment on the signal in Connecticut and I want to comment on the signal in Connecticut and Military. In my district, encompasses Military on the other side of Connecticut, but it's the same problem on both sides. The signal is much too long for Connecticut and much too short for Military. It's over 100 seconds for Connecticut in rush hour. In Military, I think it's 40. And so what happens is the traffic sometimes, at least on my side, will back up all the way to Reno Road and beyond. And what that does is that the drivers get they get real antsy because they want to get to work on time, and they start speeding and going fast, and that causes a lot of accidents. So I think a real look at that signal would be a big help.
Take up.
Just a couple of things. One, to agree with Chris, because that's the point at which all three of our districts meet. So it's an interesting intersection. But as they back up towards Reno Road, it's only getting worse. I mean, I know you hear that every day and every hour of every day, but it really is only getting worse. And I don't know if that was partly because, particularly during the resurfacing that occurred a little bit on Reno, and there was some redirecting, I don't know. But there's a lot of different factors obviously going on. That's one. Secondly, how long would the signage take how long would it take to make the decision, and then once the decision was made to, let's say, one, remove the parking space, and two, make the signage changes?
So the parking change will go through the NOI process, which is a 30 business day process, about 45 calendar days. We could do the signing changes all but the parking nearly immediately. All of the background work has been done on that. And then we could just move the parking once the NOI process closes. So we can move very quickly on signing changes.
So, hi, my question is related to signaling as well, because just looking throughout the report, I was wondering why that is not in here as far as consideration. Is it something that you ruled out, or were you not asked to do that? So just getting more background about why signaling wasn't.
We considered, okay, yeah, we considered 3 other treatments out there. We considered an all-way stop, which is not a tenable solution based on the volume that's on Military Road. We also considered forcing right turns for the southbound approach to eliminate that through and left turn, because that's obviously the more exposed movement at the intersection, and that bears out the crash data. Yes, off Chevy Chase Parkway.
So heading west on Military, turning onto...
No, this would be on the Chevy Chase Parkway approach to not allow a through or a left turn movement on the southbound approach. So to restrict that to right turn only. So...
I live in the triangle, so we're all stuck in the triangle, and we use Chevy Chase Parkway and go north, crossing Military, which is always jammed. Most of us don't come south because it's too dangerous, because if you cross Military and Chevy Chase Parkway, there's, we just go down to Nevada, but if you come south, and I do that 4 times a week, probably from volunteering. Often there's a car, if I'm crossing over Military, on the other side, I think there's, who lives in that? Do you live in that house in the corner? Anyway, I think there's a fire hydrant, but often there's a big vehicle parked there, and that makes that road narrow. And that's somebody who buys 333. So
this is on the north leg of...
Military and the driveway to that parking garage, there should never be a car parked there. And the reason is, it's so narrow that, say, if I'm coming the other direction, I mean, I never come south. It's just too dangerous because this is too narrow for that. But if I'm coming north of Chevy Chase Parkway, which I do, and my neighborhood always does, and we're parked up Hill and Jennifer or Jocelyn. Anyway, if we're getting near the intersection, they're speeding, and these are Maryland cars, these are local parking cars. These are speeding, and they go to take that turn into Chevy Chase Parkway, and they almost hit you because there's this car parked there. And it should never be parked there, because it makes it's a narrow road.
Okay, we will take a look at the parking kind of standoffs at the corner there to make sure that's correct. If I can just finish my thought before we move on. So, just to be clear, the changes that we're talking about would not impact your ability to move northbound along Chevy Chase Parkway in any way.
It's saying
okay.
Some sight lines in those turns.
Understood.
Let him finish in response to
So,
this question.
so the second treatment that we considered, the restriction to a right turn only along southbound Chevy Chase Parkway at Military. The issue that we have there is, in situations where we have street parking, so if there was parking at the north curb of Military Road, we would have the ability to channelize that movement and create a channelization that forces vehicles to the right and thereby encourages them to only turn right rather than violate the restriction and go through or turn left. We don't have that standoff because we don't have the parking. So as a result, that channelization would impact the pedestrian crossing.
How does that relate to the signaling and your consideration of the signaling?
I was explaining the 3 treatments that we investigated that do not appear in the report. So the second one was right turn, yeah, we'll pass that.
Okay.
The third is a signal.
Yes.
While my team does not evaluate new signals in the district, I can tell you that looking at data, it doesn't seem that a signal would be supported. So signals require, there are warranting criteria, there are backgrounds to signals, And the volume thresholds on Chevy Chase Parkway, the volumes are just very low on Chevy Chase Parkway generally. And so it's likely that a signal wouldn't be warranted under such low side street volume. Now again, I'm not going to speak for our signal folks. We'll be happy to take this back to them and they can take a look at it. But the other side of signalization is of course the induced demand that comes as a result of the signal being there. So a lot of times when you place a signal, especially with a minor volume side street like that, all of a sudden it becomes a more attractive route to get through a neighborhood. So just another consideration with signalization.
But that is something in the process that could be considered through another group.
It's certainly, I would be happy to pass it off to our signals folks for their comment and get back to you.
Thank you. Dave? Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Before we go to the community, we'll get you in just a second. The first is, you didn't do any speed checks on Military Road?
We did not.
Was there a reason for that?
No. It was just not part of the study. We were looking at what the impact of the diversion would be. I'd be happy to take a look at speed data, but I don't know what it would inform in our study.
Yeah, I would think
We
particularly
could probably assume that people are speeding.
coming down from Connecticut Avenue toward Nevada, I think probably there is some speeding going on there in that direction.
I certainly believe it. It just wasn't part of the focus of the study. That's why we didn't.
Okay, that it seems to me that's an omission that's significant. The second thing is, I don't really understand why you rejected the four-way stop there, because you've got a light at Nevada and you've got a light at Connecticut. So the traffic ought not to be, it ought not to slow them down stopping there. You've also got another stop sign on the other side of Connecticut going toward Western Avenue on Military Road. And the volumes may be different over there, I don't know, but there is a stop sign there. And so it doesn't seem to me that there's an adequate justification for not having a four-way stop here. Four-way stop, it seems to me, would solve the problem, and pretty well in the problem, without having to go to a one-way there, which we had some experience with that on 39th and Jennifer and Reno Road. And so we know that there's certainly a long period when people are getting accustomed to it where they're just going to go through that. And it's going to create havoc, I'm afraid. And so I would like a further explanation for why a four-way stop won't work, given the fact that you've got a stoplight at the two alternate intersections there.
So effectively, Military Road being a principal arterial with approximately 11,000 vehicles a day using it, and Chevy Chase with about 1,000 vehicles a day using it, in a volume imbalance situation like that, four-way stops are not ideal, because the majority of folks that are pulling up to that stop sign along Military Road are not seeing side street traffic when they pull up to it. And the concern is that over time, that dilutes the effectiveness of the stop sign and the willingness for people to respect it and adhere to it. So typically the answer in situations where there's a large imbalance is that it's not a good idea for an all-way stop, because effectively it just becomes a potential for either abuse or a situation that has to be dealt with enforcement.
Still seems to me that that's not a bad solution. But okay, we'll go to Peter. We'll start with you.
My name is Peter Goss, and I live at the house at the northwest corner of this. I'm very, just to say, I'm thrilled when we're doing anything about this. So I think that's great, and I'm open to all sorts of solutions. I have a few questions. One of the things that you recommended solution may or may not address, but I just want to understand it. It is cars, frustrated drivers coming from Nevada, finding themselves at the end of the queue for the Connecticut line, whipping around the corner onto Chevy Chase Parkway, heading north. Does this, would you tell those drivers, signal them that this is restricted by having those upright poles all the way out to the corner, so they would know they're not going into a constricted area? Because if they don't know ahead of time, they're going to plow through. You can put all those upright plastic things you want, and not going to put it in. They're going to take them down. Do you understand what I'm asking? In other words, the proceeding east on Military turning north on Chevy Chase, that corner, because of that strange angle, people on Military were trying to find an alternate route so they aren't sitting in the queue. They do not see anything, they can't see anything in advance of getting to that intersection. So they come whipping around it. And there are a lot of people here who have kids, young kids in the houses right on that side of the intersection. And to get to the houses, they walk around there. How would, other than marked white lines on the pavement, how would drivers on Military be told that this is, they're going into a constricted area?
So the flex posts, which are the flexible linear posts that you're speaking about, they would run effectively everywhere where you see the white line. So a portion of those would be adjacent to the travel lane on Military to serve as somewhat of an early warning. And to speak to your point about perhaps the narrow width of the mold out, which is what we call this, when you basically force an offset like that. This is just conceptual in the diagram, so if this was something that, so if you thought that this needed to be wider to actually push that turnout further, it's certainly something that we could explore as the design purposes.
Okay, just an observation from having lived there 20 years. If you don't, given all the restrictions you said exist in terms of changing design on Military because of the principal criteria, if those restrict you from putting stuff out onto Military, like these, whatever you call the things, you're going to need to do that as much as you can do it, because otherwise it's not going to make a way of difference, because they're already moving around the curve.
Sure. And so the design would ensure that there was adequate visibility of the bulb out on the Military approach, so that we didn't have folks turning directly into it as they hug the corner.
The other thing about just in general about this intersection, it seems to me, I know you have to live with the dot on that, but 15 is not the right number. I should have started a law a long time ago, but since I work at home, there are dozens of instances a year. And many of them are so minor, and if people don't report them, or they involve not the best driving on both drivers. The number is much higher. I think that's easily true. I think that would make the case for what this woman was saying. There's also a problem going northbound on Military because of the northbound. Because the intersection is not square, going both directions, you just have to nose all the way out into Military, by which time you get the view you also
It's also because the land is hill, and two different corners, and you can't see through a hill. That's just life.
And then one other question, what are those little green things stuck in the road? Is that a flattened, make way for the next time?
Yes. It is a pedestrian pylon, yes.
That is the pedestrian sign of the state.
Not even
I just want to comment on one thing Peter talked about when cars are turning, any kind of restriction. The fact, and I'll mention it again, that there's no sidewalks. People are walking sometimes in the middle of the street on both sides of Military, where that car is parked, where it shouldn't be parked, where people turning right, and that just pushes pedestrians further out, because this isn't a 90-degree street and all these angles, people swing wide. And a lot of times, probably half the people here have been walking and cars come very close to them as a result of that.
Oh, hi, I'm Amy TJ. I also live on Military Road on the south side between Military and Chevy Chase Parkway. So this is my back door, a front door. My first question is, I see where your detour is on Legation. What are you proposing for traffic control from Legation onto Connecticut Avenue going southbound? I mean, it's dangerous as it is now, turning on Military Road southbound. To go on Legation southbound onto Connecticut is treacherous in the best of times.
So this would be a left turn at Legation, a westbound left turn onto southbound Connecticut Avenue Legation?
Well, you're going to put traffic, I suggest you only have to put traffic control signals someplace. And I agree with Randy that it makes more sense to use a stop sign as a traffic calming mechanism along Military Road rather than introducing a new signal onto Connecticut Avenue. Because there's just as much chance that somebody's going to run that red light on Connecticut Avenue because they're going to think it's superfluous.
Okay.
My next question was to discuss the background traffic on Military Road, heading westbound towards Connecticut Avenue to Chevy Chase Parkway. We have a big issue now with people making a left turn into the parking garage at 5333. And that blocks traffic. And the same thing is people pulling out of the parking garage and making that illegal left turn onto Military Road. And it's blocking traffic.
This is the building that's in the southeast quadrant of Connecticut and Military, correct?
Yes.
At our request and at DDOT's agreement, they do have signs there. The signage says no left turn, but it doesn't surprise me that people do in fact make left turns coming out of the alley and going into the alley from Military Road.
And that causes tremendous backup on Military Road.
It causes accidents.
Thank you. My name is Phoebe Papagiorgio. I live on the corner next to Peter on Military in Connecticut, Military Chevy Chase Parkway. And thank you, Derek, for all your work on this and meeting with us earlier this year. Appreciate your ANC bringing this to the attention of the group. With respect to the proposal you have to put those poles, if you were to make it one-way northbound, which I think generally I would agree with that idea, because you park on Chevy Chase Parkway and you do walk around that corner there and there's no sidewalk. As an alternative to having those poles, would it be possible to raise it as a sidewalk itself and then bump it out where you have it striped on the diagram and it's actually a sidewalk there? Because that would alleviate the concern I have for my son and for my neighbor's children who we pass there all the time and there's no sidewalk. That's my primary, as a pedestrian, that's my primary concern.
I know that sidewalks in the roadway have been something that DDOT has traditionally not supported. And I know that other requests along Chevy Chase Parkway have come in for sidewalk where the only place that it can logically go is the roadway. I can ask what the status of that is with our folks that handle sidewalk. I don't readily have an answer for you.
So yes, mine was on Sandbottom. I live on the block, if you want to take them away, 3600 block in Revolution. And I've lived here since 1984 on that block. And I think you misdiagnosed the problem by using it as your condition car crashes. This is a neighborhood that is predominantly viewed as a pedestrian and walking neighborhood. And while none of us have been picked off by cars, or very few of us have been picked off by cars, we believe we take our life in our hands walking on Chevy Chase Parkway, trying to cross Military Road, but also on Legation Street, using data from April. The volume of Maryland drivers who are avoiding Military Road already by speeding on legation has gone up drastically in the last year. I can duck a car, but there's an awful lot of kids in our neighborhood, and they can't duck cars as easily. So I think you're using the wrong indicia of how to solve the problem. And if you dump another 500 cars on my block, I'm going to be vehemently opposing it.
Sure.
Okay? This is a pedestrian problem, not a car crash problem.
Thank you.
Yes, Ronald Rubin, I live in 3700 block of Military on the south side. First off, I want to thank the commissioners for all your comments, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. Bear with me, I have comments from a lot of my neighbors that couldn't make it here tonight. But I appreciate your work. I don't think you saw the full dimension of the problem. And there's some factors that I think you have to look at closely. This is not a new problem, and for the last 2 years, I know Randy's been sick and tired of hearing from me, but it hasn't gotten any better. A major contributor to what's going on here is 5333 Connecticut Avenue. Okay? For instance,
Is that the new building on the southeast corner? Okay.
in the memorandum of understanding, their residents will not receive parking permits. I can assure you that virtually every person in that building not only got a resident parking permit, but got a visitor permit. I was out yesterday, there was a car with a Maryland tag with a visitor permit, and a car with a Virginia tag with a resident permit. Okay? What they do is they take the permit, they put it on a piece of paper. They don't fix it to the windshield, they pass it around. Not only personal vehicles, commercial vehicles. I had a shuttle bus parked in front of my house for 3 days with a resident parking permit. Okay?
The shuttle bus.
Shuttle bus is registered residentially, not commercial. Okay? And I'm just going to say it's happening a lot. There is absolutely no enforcement of traffic regulations. I agree with what you said about the people walking the neighborhood, but I live right on the road, and I can tell you, those vehicles scream up and down Military Road. They pay no attention to any of the traffic signs, particularly the speed. It was mentioned that left turn from that left turn lane from Military on Connecticut heading west. To the commissioner's point about the people in his area, I mean, you can't miss it. How many days there have been more accidents with that left turn lane on Connecticut Avenue? Cars are parked at the entrance of the Military Road eastbound on the alley 5333 garage, turning into that legally, it's always blocked. This weekend, there's a car with a New Jersey plate sitting right there blocking the entrance the whole time. We mentioned cars turn left on the Military Road from the parking lot all the time, turning left illegally. And I wanted to mention another issue that I think is impacting this whole problem. There's a very narrow alleyway between our houses, between Kanawha and Military. I wrote to DC back in May 2017 about this issue. 311, 911, nothing happened. This alley is very narrow, it's very passable as it is. With the current situation, it would be impossible for a fire or other public safety vehicle to get through. It's an important issue. People, against regulations, leave trash cans in the alley, violation of DC regs, making it impossible to get through. More importantly, it's become a race. Cars going up to 5333, coming up from Chevy Chase Parkway, but more importantly, turning right out of the garage and going down to Chevy Chase Parkway. Part of the memorandum of understanding.
I don't want to cut you off now, but Dan and I have talked about this as well, and I think we're going to have an agenda item just on 5333 Connecticut. And I know that a lot of your problems here relate specifically to that, and not following what was specified in the memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure that that affects this intersection so as much as it is.
It does, Randy, because the traffic turning right out of the garage and going down the alley. First of all, it does because it's a safety issue. But I can tell you, trying to make a turn out of the alley becomes a real problem with that intersection.
Okay. All right, we don't have time to go, we're gonna have to cut this off very quickly because we've got a lot of other things on our agenda. I'm gonna take 2 more questions from people who have not asked questions previously. 2 more is all we're gonna get. Yes?
I live at the house that on the corner that a lot of people have been talking about, which is the southbound, I guess going north across Chevy Chase on the southwest corner of Military and Chevy Chase. I support, the idea of a sidewalk as well on that street, it's super narrow. To the point about the parking, I totally agree too with the parking. Even if you put no parking signs up there on that south, as people were discussing, it's one thing to have the signs there, it's another thing to actually enforce it. Right? They recently actually moved those signs back so that only one car could park there. This morning, there was a car that was out there for 2 days. I called 311, and nobody came to kind of like ticket it or do anything about it. So oftentimes, even though you're only supposed to have 1 car there, I don't think you should have any. There are often 2 cars there. So even if one of the solutions is fixing the parking enforcement there and taking away the parking spots, somebody still needs to come by and check because people want that when they continue to park there. And I guess the last point I made is on your proposal to take away 1 parked car in each direction. Looking at kind of like the distance required for freight, according to the study, it looks like in some, particularly on the southwest corner, you need to take like two spots to, I think, am I looking at the chart right?
So there's 2 kinds of sight distance that we consider. We consider intersection and stopping. And stopping is the ability of the mainline motorist to recognize that somebody's entering the roadway and then stop in time. It's different from intersection sight distance. So, and typically intersection sight distance is not satisfied largely throughout Washington, D.C. because of how constrained the city is. But the reason why when you approach on the Chevy Chase Parkway approaches you feel uncomfortable is because you can't gain the intersection sight distance that you need. So what we're trying to do is open it up so the side streets have a little bit more. But the main line, once you enter the lane, provided, again, that if I'm on the side street, I've not entered the lane in haste or, with you 60 feet away from me, the idea is to open that up as much as possible so that if I were to enter the roadway, or if I were to see you and enter the roadway, you hopefully could see me sooner.
So I guess what I'm saying there is I think you should consider taking away 2 spots there, because I don't know.
Next question. We've got 1 more.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, all the way in the back who's been asking. Oh, you have asked.
I was going to say quickly, I support Randy and Jerry. I really do think the 4-way stop is a solution. I know you hate them, didn't use the 39 and Reno, it would have solved the problem. But really, I like to avoid 4-way streets if you can. I personally have done that for 50 years. When I first moved here in 1971, you can't get across Legation, Military, Cecilia Chase Parkway, and get on the Chevy Chase on the other side. So I always make a left turn onto Legation, go down to Nevada, turn to the light, and use the light. And when I'm most of the time going up to Livingston, and going up to the line of Connecticut. But I don't know if you can impose that if you actually can avoid it with a 4-way stop.
Okay, we're going to have to move on to something else. I promised this gentleman a long time ago that he would get a question, and I'll give him 1 quick question.
My name is Cal Salone. I used to, I've been walking across that intersection since I went to deal with Wilson back in the 60s. First of all, I want to let you know that there is a lot of traffic turning southbound Connecticut, turning on to eastbound Military during rush hour. It actually increases the traffic on the west and the east side. Very different. Yeah. Secondly, I'm principally a pedestrian, and just an hour and a half ago, I not those visible hawk signals, but the kind of signal where pedestrians can call for it. And these lights light up on the roadway along the crosswalk. I think that's what they have at Lenox in Connecticut by the Maryland post office. I'm not sure what they have there. But since you don't have a lot of pedestrian traffic there, but as the population continues to age, in this neighborhood especially, we need to be able to cross those intersections safely. So I don't know what department that goes in. But, you know what I'm talking about?
I do. So the in-ground warning lights are something that at this point DDOT doesn't install or maintain because the water intrusion in the wintertime is such a maintenance. So DDOT does not install or maintain in-ground or in-pavement warning lights, mostly because from a maintenance standpoint, they're very difficult to keep up in colder regions where you have the freeze-thaw cycles. It's certainly something I can take back, but up until this point, it's not something that DDOT has supported in the past. In lieu, they would install something like a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which you've probably seen around the district. That's a push-button actuated wig-wag flasher. And then, of course, the hawk signals that you're talking about. We did do pedestrian counts out there. We do see that pedestrians are obviously using that intersection. They're probably using it at a rate that's lower than the warranting criteria for those devices. But people may also be avoiding the intersection because they think it's unsafe. So we know that there's a little bit of give and take on that,
Okay.
right? So
We're going to have to move to another topic because I hate to do this because I know there are a lot of people who are still concerned about this. But Derek, am I correct? You're going to have to come back to us anyway with an NOI, right? If you're going to do anything?
We'll come back with an NOI immediately in the short term concerning the parking. And we have a series of questions that we need to get back to you on as well.
Okay, so nothing's going to happen as a result of your recommendations right now anyway.
I think we should move ahead with at least the quick signing fixes out there that we've talked about.
Right, no.
And we won't move the parking signing because we'll wait for the NOI to close on that. So you'll get the NOI, we'll do the signing changes here within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that would be good, but then we're not going to go to the one-way street though yet.
That's correct, we will not.
And you look at the pedestrian on the meter.
Sure.
Sure.
This is like the one. And this is like what was installed at 39th and Reno Road, right?
So that's not a true RRFB. That's just a flashing warning sign.
Right. I thought it's activated by a pedestrian.
It is activated by a button. It's actually the first one in the district, right, of the flashing warning sign. Right. It's certainly something we can take up. Is that what you're talking about here? Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry for all the other people who've gotten delayed here right now, but we're going to get to the next item. Jerry, I think this is also yours. It's a, thank you, Derek. This is a special exception at 3400 McKinley. And when you're leaving, could you be as quiet as possible, please, so we can continue to have the meeting here? Please keep the noise down.
Would you please be quiet till you get out in the hallway? Thank you.
Okay, that cleared out the room and got everybody quiet. So this is a discussion and a vote on an application for a special exception for rear yard setback for an addition at 3400 McKinley. And I'm just going to quickly turn it over.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Krista Schauer. I'm the architect on the proposed addition at 3400 McKinley Street. We have applied for a special exception for this, and so we're here tonight to request your support for that. I'd like to walk you through the packet that I gave you, handed out. The first page has the plat on it. It shows a two-story brick house. The owners have two small children, and they would like to add a family room off of the kitchen. And
add a second story of a playroom as well as a full basement underneath. So in order to do that off the kitchen, it requires that you go to the west of the property. Because it's a corner lot, we have, and it's an unusual shape, we have the choice of either street front being the front property, and therefore deciding which is going to be the side property and which is going to be the rear of the property. So it works for this addition to make the short end along the alley, the back property. So that's where we're getting our 25-foot setback on that. Follow me? Then on the next page, it shows, I'm just going to run quickly through these next pages. The next page shows the floor plan for the basement. So the fitness room is the footprint of the addition. It's 14 feet by 22 feet on the exterior. The next page shows the first floor. So that's where you've got the family room coming off the existing house with the kitchen and dining room open. And then the third floor shows the third floor plan shows the second floor with the playroom off the existing bedrooms. And then the next page, A004, shows the 3 elevations. So you get an elevation from the front of the house, which is on McKinley, and the side that's against the alleyway, and then the back, which is facing the neighbor. And then the final 11 by 17 page is the existing site plan. So you can see the existing conditions there. And then jumping ahead to the 8.5 by 11s, we've got some of the zoning data. It shows the percentage of lot coverage, so we'd be at 33. And what we're asking for the special exception is that we would be encroaching that 25-foot setback by 11 feet. So our new setback would be 14 feet. Then the next few pages show the photographs of the property. So you get the front view, and you can see the deck in that photograph. So it's in place of that deck where the addition would be. And then the side views, the next page shows the side view where the addition would be, as well as the neighbor, so you can get an idea of the closest neighbor to this property. And then the last 2 pages again are showing the side where the addition would go. We've also collected letters of support from 5 neighbors, so that's included in the packet. And I do want to make note that the very first letter, they've all given the support. The first letter has asked that we also look at moving the AC unit outside, and this is the neighbor that's right up against that house. So we've agreed that yes, we would push it to where he wants it, which would be in the middle of the existing house. And you'll see in the elevation right now, it's at the edge of the house, so we'll be moving that. And so that's it. If anybody has any questions?
Did any of the neighbors object? Or?
No neighbors objected. No, I've got the owner Alex here also.
No, one of the letters of support in addition to the surrounding neighbor is the property that's where the special exception would be needed is the house right next door. So it's everybody that we got letters from supported and no objections.
All of the contiguous, all of the homes that surround.
Yeah, right across the street, right next to on both sides, and then also kind of down the community.
What about across the alley?
Across
The neighbor across the alley?
Yeah, so that house, that's the one that's where the addition would go out towards, and they put it on their support. That's the collapse that you see in there.
First of all, I want to compliment you on this package, this materials. This is
good.
really excellent.
Thank you.
And it makes it very easy for us to go through it.
Terrific. Terrific.
questions? Any questions? Abe?
Just a quick question. The 25-foot setback, if it is being changed to 14 feet, that's from the, sorry, it's being changed to 11 feet, or it's being changed to 14 feet? 14 feet. It's being, okay. That's from the public alley to the property? Is that?
So if you look back at the very first page, the plat,
Yes.
you can see the angle, so it shows the dotted line of the 25 feet setback here that's parallel with the alley, but because the addition is not parallel with the alley, the back portion of the addition would be at the 25 feet, and then this front corner encroaches it by 11 feet.
Got it. Okay.
Variance is 11 feet on that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We have the variance is 11 feet. I'm confused why that's 14 and 11.
Well, maybe I misstated the variance of going into it by 11 feet. So that the,
Public space.
did I state that incorrectly?
Got it. I get it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I just noticed one thing on this drawing too, that it actually crosses the building restriction line. Is that, we have a lot of experience with the Public Space Committee about building restriction lines and what can be built in that. Is that in essence public space? Is that
Are you
correct?
referring to the building restriction line along the street, 15 feet? Because it's definitely kept back from that. So the only building restriction.
shows that it crosses the restriction.
Yes.
Well, this is existing. That's all existing, so this is.
Okay, so that's existing. Okay.
This is what
Okay, so that's
pre-existing.
It's existing, all right. Never mind. We're not gonna raise that one. Okay, any other questions? Okay, motion.
I'm sure the wording won't be correct, but I move that we have no objections to this exception. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, I think this one is that we have a motion to support.
Okay, I move that we support this request for the exception.
All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Again, wonderful presentation. Thank you. All right, Dan.
Yes, sir.
You're up.
Yes, sir. So, on the agenda next, we have the liquor license application applied for the Old City Diner to the transfer or new, actually liquor license for the new ACD for the diner. It's Opera 110576. We've had representatives with us a couple of times, several times. We've gone over a lot of details. We now have reached the point of establishing the beginnings for a mutual agreement of understanding. We have also, as we've had our conversations, we have tried to follow as realizing the needs of the new proprietor, but also wanting to stick with what the commission as a whole has been doing for the past several years, stick to some basic standards of everyone, of equal standards, equal fairness, no competitive advantage, et cetera, but yet being a business-friendly environment, doing what we can to help them out. I have some the three major items that we need to talk about that are usually contained or are contained with our settlement agreements. I can go through them real quickly and see if you, maybe I should go that way and see if you guys have any problems with any of it. And then we can obviously talk to our representatives from from ACD. So the three which, I'll leave the legal items pretty much out of it, it's kind of which are standard, but we'll deal with the hours, the trash, and the occupancy. And the hours, and I'll go fairly quickly here, so please stop me if anybody has questions. And these are standard, have been standard thus far, at least. They're broken into three categories. First, hours of operation. We have hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday, 7 to 12 midnight on Sunday. Secondly, we have hours of outdoor operations. There's a type here, which would be recommended 7 to 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Friday and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday. Those correspond with the Little Beast, of which we passed a few weeks ago, and of which they're operating. Third category, hours of alcohol beverage sales. And in parallel to the other establishments, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and 7 a.m. to noon on Sunday. That I actually, based upon conversations I know and concerns with commissioners, would make 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. on Sunday. Okay. The second category is trash. We have a unique situation, which actually is a great situation. I applaud the proprietor for moving forward on this, because it's the new way and the new trend, which is the including of a trash room interior and no exterior trash of the facility placed outside. So the item reads, the licensee agrees to store all trash in the enclosed indoor room that would be inaccessible to rodents and other pests. The licensee agrees to have scheduled trash pickups at least 3 times per week on the items inside the room. If, however, the licensee does not store all the trash in the enclosed room that is inaccessible to rodents and pests, the license agrees to have scheduled pickups 7 days per week. The licensee further agrees not to dispose of any glass or bottles in the hour between the hours of 12 a.m. and 7 a.m., except for obviously inside the enclosed indoor room. Next item, third item, occupancy. The licensee agrees that the occupancy of the premises will be no greater than 111 seats indoors and 54 outdoors. This is based upon the final drawings that came back to us. It includes the ADA compliance, which is required. It is a higher number than some of us may have liked to have seen, but I understand the requests by the proprietor, and based upon another venue that is the same size, if not larger, on the avenue, without some kind of engineering justification. I think 165 is something we should probably go ahead and allow. Commissioners, any questions?
I just want to say I do support 8 a.m. for alcoholic beverage service on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm not a fan of 7 a.m. hours, and I think that's consistent with what we've done with the other businesses.
It is. Sure. It is. Yeah, into code, I think 8 o'clock is the earliest that we could sell it. My question for clarity was just on the Monday through Thursday. You know, obviously we don't expect anyone coming in, you know, early in the morning during the week and getting cocktails, and it being a problem for us or for the community. I think we're thinking more of the Monday holidays, that we would traditionally serve brunch on a Monday holiday and not having to apply for a special exception. And then the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, there's 3 days left. It's not a big part of our business. It's more of a convenience for the guest. And to have somebody that comes in that maybe works third shift and wants a drink in the morning, and we have to tell them that we can't, even though we could by law, but we really can't sell to them because the community doesn't want us to serve during the week, you know, that early.
would really be the response, and obviously we would own the response to the community, but I don't think it's a lot of business. I think we're all concerned about the evening hours, you know, making sure that we're quiet on the street at night, and making sure that we're making sure that there's no noise in the street at night, not on a Tuesday or Wednesday during the day. So I would ask the commission to consider that, and if that's too much of a stretch, then I would say consider a Monday exception to holidays. It's a lengthy process for us to go through, and again, typically on a lot of the Monday holidays, we will offer brunch type service. A lot of people are off in the neighborhood, and they like to enjoy that, you know, on their extra holiday off, and we would not have to apply for that each and every time.
Well, I'm looking to the precedent in our neighborhood, and the Avenue, for instance, we have approved only 10 a.m. And that's on every day, actually, for the Avenue. And I think I would stick with 10 a.m. I don't have any problem with maybe making an exception for Monday holidays.
Okay.
But how do others feel about that?
What time does the Avenue open?
10 a.m., I think.
Officially they can, but actually I think they're opening as this.
Yeah, okay. And you would officially be opening earlier?
7 o'clock. Yeah, we would be at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, community restaurant, and according to ABRO, we can't sell before 8 o'clock a.m. And so that's just a law that the community knows. But after that time, and again, we're not talking about it's not about sales. It's about the consumer that comes in and says, how come I can't, and writes a complaint, and they're dissatisfied about it, and we have to explain it.
What does Little Beast have?
10 o'clock, I believe.
It's 10 o'clock. They open earlier.
They open earlier.
They do, well, and that's because although it's not a full, they will be different styles, let's say business models, but that being said, they have morning, they will have morning.
When I first...
It won't be breakfast, but it will be morning options.
When I first heard about this, I thought, who's going to be there that early drinking? But when you said third shift people, I remember working third shift, and we'd get off. Everyone knows I was with the Secret Service, and I didn't drink, but we'd get off, and the guys would have beer and eggs. They wouldn't get drunk, they'd just have one beer with eggs because we were up all night. So with that, I kind of understand it. So I'm not as opposed as I was at the beginning.
I mean, I understand you're looking for consistency in the neighborhood, and again, it's not something that we're adamant about. I think it's more of a convenience to the consumer. You know, at our Ted's Bulletin restaurants, we have a lot of law enforcement that come in that work all different types of hours, and we appreciate them. We like them in our restaurant. They help us to provide a safe environment for our employees and for people that work around the clock, which there are a lot of businesses that support second and third shift.
Has anybody else on Avenue even asked for permission to serve alcohol at 8 o'clock in the morning?
No, but I want to say in initial talks, this is a little tangent, but I believe Jeffrey, I think Gilmore came in originally asking for that, but I can't, that's been years now.
That was then, this is
now.
I don't remember.
My
I don't have any problem with 8 o'clock.
Well, are we saying the holiday exception?
No, all the time.
Or 8 o'clock all the time? Oh, 8 o'clock all the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'm persuaded.
And holiday, Susie asked.
That would cover it. Yeah, that would cover it.
Okay, and based upon that, so I will make a motion that we do not oppose the alcohol application for the new set ACD based upon the acceptance of the settlement agreement with the parameters that we've discussed tonight, of which I will formalize, act as representative, and sign.
All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
I think we should do a security check on DDOT. It got quiet out there. Thank you very much for everything the last few meetings and allowing us to show the presentation.
Thank you.
And Steve, I know you were prepared to do some additional discussion tonight, or do you still have those packets? Yeah, I would give it everything, because there's kind of some updated drawings and that kind of thing, and it's good to keep that going, so we know what's going on.
Okay, while Steve's getting that, let me introduce our next presenter. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with this culvert that's across from the Embassy for the Ivory Coast on Broad Branch Road. And there's a culvert that runs from what used to be a tributary of Broad Branch that they've now restored, and then runs underneath Broad Branch Road and eventually gets into Broad Branch Stream. Whenever there's a big rain, that culvert gets blocked up, it doesn't have sufficient capacity, and it flows over Broad Branch Road. And that's happened a number of times just in the last year or so. And so I've been talking with DOEE about this for some time as well, and they've been working on getting a solution to that and getting a contract to be able to fix the problem. And today we have Cecilia Lane, who's going to explain to us what they're going to do.
Thank you, Randy. Sure. Hi, I'm Cecilia Lane. I work for the Department of Energy and Environment in the Watershed Protection Division in the Restoration Branch. And I'm here to talk about the culvert upgrade project that we're just starting. I did make a big poster board, but I see that it's very small and not very helpful, so I did try to color with some highlighters, but I'll talk you through it. I did pass out some blow-ups to you all. So basically, as was just stated, the culvert at the bottom of the stream restoration project currently overtops in as little as a 10-year event. And so we see that the Broad Branch Road, right there across from the Ivory Coast Embassy, floods on a regular basis. What this project will do is, currently the water goes through a 36-inch pipe and goes directly across the street into a box culvert, a very large 11 by 7 box culvert. That 36-inch pipe is nestled in an 8-foot archway culvert that was abandoned. Nobody knows why. There's no There's no real information to support why it's going that way. So what we are proposing to do is recommission the 8-foot archway culvert and take out the 36-inch pipe that would allow to convey more discharge into the existing box culvert. What we found when we got down in the ground is that that 8-foot archway culvert, and that's what you'll see in the blow up in front of you, stops about 75 feet short of the box culvert that we want to tie into. So what we need to do is an analysis of the existing conditions and design surfaces for the continuation of the archway culvert. So I'll show you in this, on the blow-ups and then also on this big one. So what I'm talking about is this orange line is underground, it's a box culvert that goes underground. It's currently taking the majority of the storm water in the area. And then it outlets down here past the Ivory Coast. That's where it becomes a stream again. Here's the bottom of our stream restoration project, and currently it's just going in this very small pipe, the yellow that I highlighted, into the box culvert. What we saw, as I said, is this 8-foot archway, which is highlighted in pink, but it stopped short. So we don't really know how much. We just sort of finished the trajectory of that line and assumed that that's where they would connect. The engineering firm that we just contracted with will do all that analysis to determine. Part of that analysis will let us know, we asked for recommendations, so whether that's a continuation of an 8-foot archway culvert, which is going to be pretty expensive, or can we go down a size, maybe 6 feet, elliptical, whatever it needs to take that flow. So to educate myself on official language of culvert, I didn't know it was called a culvert. So can you educate us just briefly on, is a culvert more like a pipe? Is it, like, what formation is that you're calling a culvert?
Yeah, good question, because DDOT doesn't recognize it as a culvert. So I can't really speak to the definition. What we're talking about is something that's passing underneath the bridge that's going to carry the water. That's all we're looking at, is conveying the water through a pipe. So we want to go from a pipe this big to big, this big.
Basically, it's a pipe.
That's what we're looking at, right? I think DDOT's definition of a culvert is that it has to be a pipe that's open on the outside, and then they look at it as a culvert that way, and so that's why this does not fall under their culvert program. We don't really care. We see it's a problem. It's at the bottom of our stream restoration project. As part of the stream restoration project, we had to commit to that it was not going to increase or worsen flooding. We recognize it is flooding. It's not a result of our stream restoration project, and we want to make sure people don't conflate that. Also, we see it's a problem, and we're willing to fix it. So that's why we're taking it on. So in terms of timelines, we just have the project kit. It took a little bit to contract this. Thank you. We just had our project kickoff meeting on Friday with the vendor, who is JMT. Again, we're just doing designs, assessment, and permitting for this practice. They should have, by November 1st, an existing conditions detailed report, kind of telling us their findings from being in the field. By December 1st, we should have 65% designs, at which point I will come back to you all and let you know we will have a public meeting, and I will invite you to our public meeting. We will present the findings and their recommendations. Then we should have 100% designs by February, and then we'll go into permitting. We are anxious to get this project moving and finished, because obviously once we get designs and get it permitted, we will begin construction, which is another contracting issue. So
How long is the construction?
I have no information on construction, but I will have that as a result of the assessment and recommendations.
Will it require, do you have any idea what will require closing Broad Branch Road?
All of this work should take place in DDOT's right away, and most of it occurs on the Ivory Coast, right on top of the Ivory Coast land. Again, it's right of way. We're engaging the Ivory Coast Embassy. So I don't think so, but there will probably be a maintenance of traffic permit, so they might have to do one way around the project area, but all of that will come out through this report.
Any other questions? Thank you, Cecilia, for coming out. I do want to follow this closely as it goes through, because it does affect people who live on Broad Branch or live in that neighborhood, use that road a lot. So we appreciate what DOEE is doing here, because someone needed to take care of it. Who stepped up. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to start this project. It's kind of a little different than my environmental stuff that I'm normally doing, and anytime you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, we'll have 2 public meetings at least. We'll have the 65% design one and the 100% design. We'll have a little bit more details to share with you all. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, we'll get through this quickly, is the possible comments on the draft small cell design guidelines. And I see the Wrens here, I'm sure you're good with this. I reported at our September 10th meeting about a town hall that DDOT had on September 6th, where they explained the small cell guidelines and presented the draft guidelines, and also had some presentations by the possible vendors for installing the small cell. The draft guidelines describe the standards that the Public Space Committee will apply for these installations. And small cell installations are really designed to boost the carriers' signals, Verizon and AT&T and those kinds of carriers, and to prepare for 5G. And that's the next generation of cell service. The comments have to be submitted by October 5th, which means that we have to do something quickly if we really want it to be heard. And there's going to be a Public Space Committee meeting on October 15th to consider the draft guidelines and to make any changes. Just a couple of points about the guidelines and the presentations that I saw at this meeting, of this town hall. It doesn't look like there's going to be a huge impact in our neighborhood. And that's partly because the cell phone companies have decided that where they really need the boost is where there's the most cell phone traffic, and that's largely downtown. In fact, the two maps, they didn't have very good maps at all about what their projected installations are going to be, but both of the maps had very, very few installations in our ANC. That probably only represents their current planning though, and it certainly could be more in the future. But at least initially, we're not going to be the target of a lot of these installations. Most of the installations are going to be in the monumental core and the historic district, or a lot of them are, and that's where the aesthetics of the installation is particularly important. Also, the guidelines focus primarily on street light poles that are owned by the district. And there was a lot of discussion about exactly what the design is going to be for those. We have very few of those district-owned street light poles in our ANC. They're along Military Road, and there are then a few. They're not. I think most of those are actually utility poles. Well, maybe not. I didn't see any. You're right, they don't. So they've got to be, but in the map that they gave us, they did not have very many they were on Military Road, and I don't think they were on Connecticut Avenue. I may be mistaken. So the aesthetics of this issue primarily is going to be focused on the historic district, I think, and that's where they devoted a lot of the guidelines. The most relevant portion for our ANC, I think, is probably the Section 9 that deals with third-party owned poles and where they're going to be installed on those third-party poles, utility poles primarily. And that, it looked like to me, is more or less going to be a case-by-case analysis, because utility poles vary so much from one area to another. They don't have a standardized, in the way that they've designed them for district streetlight poles, it's very different for utility poles, and they really don't have an explanation for what they're going to do there. I think it's going to be more or less on a case-by-case basis. I've asked Matt Marcoux at the Public Space Committee to confirm that, but he hasn't gotten back to me. There are provisions in the guidelines for protecting trees, for instance. You can't put the poles within a certain distance of trees. There's also minimum spacing between the installations on a block face so that you don't get too many in one location. There have been a lot of posts on the listserv, however, about health risks. And it looks to me, and I am not an expert in this by any means, I haven't done the research that would require me to be able to understand the concerns, but it looks like there's really not been a definitive response either way, whether there's going to be some health concerns or whether there's not going to be any health concerns. But the key issue on this is all being regulated at the federal level for Congress and the FCC. And the FCC is about to issue regulations this week, Wednesday, that essentially strip, as I read them, they strip states and local governments of a lot of their regulatory authority over these small cells. And it sets up what they call a shot clock and a specific time period within which there has to be some action, or is interpreted as being a prohibition. If you don't act, it's interpreted as being a prohibition on them, which the FCC has said the states and localities can't do. So that brings us down to what, if anything, we should do at this stage. It does seem to me that there's not been an adequate, at least it's not been publicized, an adequate explanation for why this wouldn't cause health concerns. We may be blowing in the wind here. I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything about it, but I appreciate the comments from the commissioners.
I have a few comments. First off, I don't believe any of the maps that we've gotten because they just look like generalized representations without any specifics annotated in those maps. And that doesn't stop them, as you said, that doesn't stop them from doing more later on. This is just probably to a requirement that they had to show some map, and this is the map that we got. As you said, it's not an aesthetic issue, it's a health issue. And there are health concerns that have been documented in many places, including that FCC safety guidelines are very outdated and they don't address any of these issues. So they're going ahead with something that they've never studied, and it's just to promote the expansion of something that probably is just a stopgap measure until something else comes along. And that's what these small cell towers really are, is a stopgap measure. And lastly, we might think that there's nothing we can do, this is a done deal already, but there are states and localities that intend to tie this up in court with any number of suits of different kinds. And anybody that has, well, supposedly for older people and for children, these electromagnetic fields are the most hazardous. And I'm not even mentioning pets, nature, anything else like that that's been proven where these electromagnetic fields are in abundance. There have been some things that have shown deterioration. The studies weren't specific on that, so it's more hearsay kind of evidence than strict evidence, but still I think it's enough that even if we have nothing else to say about it, we can, I would propose going on record as saying that we don't support the implementation of this as it's constituted, that these need health studies, and so on.
I just want to follow on what Commissioner Mallett is saying. You said, Commissioner Spank, you said there's a lot of interesting information. One piece that really struck me is under the, I guess, Generation 4 wireless cell phone towers can be 2,000 feet apart. But the Generation 5, the signals are much weaker. So these wires, these antennas need to be 150 feet apart. The other thing is that there are 4 companies that have the right to put these antennas up. Each one, they won't share antennas amongst themselves. So there are going to be 4 companies putting antennas up 150 feet apart all over the city. Well, you know, the block I live on is 100 feet wide. That means, and it's 200 feet long. So there's going to be a couple of antennas on, more than a couple, 2 or 3 antennas on every block in our neighborhood.
The government is good with that. They specify how many can be in the block.
That's for each carrier.
No, total.
Okay, so we'll have, but the other thing that bothers me is that people have no rights to complain about any of these things. It's like these, you know, I hate to be political, but this Republican administration is, you know, just totally fallen over with, you know, letting these cell phone companies make the regulations. And the regulations say that the local governments have no say, the local people have no say where they put these antennas. So they could put an antenna right outside your grandson's bedroom or your child's bedroom, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think it's just much too broad. Personally, I think we ought to have we should object to this thing. We should just say we should object to the imposition of these arbitrary regulations on the city.
I just want to add, I know that your timeline and deadlines are a bit different, but the council member plans to announce soon a roundtable on small cells to take place sometime in November. So I imagine by the next meeting, I'll be able to give you a hard date and time for when that's going to